Hello, and welcome to the tales of the Starship Warden. It is 9:30. It is the 22nd day of November, and for many of you, it's the beginning of fall break, as Thanksgiving rears its dysfunctional, ugly head this Thursday. Of course, for most of us, we've been on fall break for the last 7 months, so having a week off for Thanksgiving really doesn't mean jack. I'm your grumpy guide to all things gaming, the OGGM. As you can see, No Shave November is starting to feel its effect on the hair. And this thing. Today we are taking our first look at Metamorphosis Alpha by James Ward, one of the great unsung heroes of role-playing. This game has been around for a very long time. Very few people have ever heard of it. And even more few people are aware of how impactful and important this game has been to our hobby. I mean, even Gygax himself references this game. That he once said, it's a game that breaks the typical level progression mold. It offers a rich, is sometimes difficult to game, array of player rewards. So, if you have any familiarity with our hobby whatsoever, you're familiar with Expedition to the Barrier Peaks, which is heavily inspired by this. And there are lots of other aspects of both D&D and non-D&D that this game has influenced. In fact, many consider this to be the very first science fiction role-playing game, as it takes aboard the huge generational starship Warden. And the basic premise is your characters begin not knowing they're on a spaceship. You think it's just a typical fantasy game because the generations have gone so long. There's been so many generations aboard this vast generational starship that they've forgotten that they were ever on a spaceship, and the people running the spaceship have died off, so the spaceship is just sort of floating around. There's a very interesting, in-depth history about this game. It was originally written in 1976, so we're talking about the same time that D&D came out. James Ward. In fact, there's some sense of the influence of this game can even be felt in the original Blackmore and Greyhawk books, because in Temple of the Frog, you run into some androids and some computers, and there's some hints that Temple of the Frog might be part of this spaceship. And Expedition to the Barrier Peaks is definitely some levels of the Warden that fell out of the Warden and crashed onto Fantasy Earth, and the player characters go to investigate it. So everything that happens in Expedition to the Barrier Peaks and the crashed spaceship of Expedition to the Barrier Peaks is actually a section of the spaceship Warden that fell off. Thus, the characters are stuck on this generation ship that has been struck by an unknown cataclysm that has killed many of the colonists and crew. The characters must survive their missions in this ship, which they believe to be a world, where they no longer understand the technology around them and encounter numerous mutated creatures. So, Thundar the Barbarian in space, or Black Star, which was Thundar the Barbarian in space. You can create a human, a mutant, a mutated plant, a mutated creature. You can also be a robot or a clone. This is the version that I got from Tim in the box of stuff. This is using the System 26 game rules by James Chambers. It was produced by Signal Fire Studios in I don't see a publication date, but I think it's relatively recent. So this is one of the more recent versions of it. I'm going to say this is 2012. Probably. So It's got, character creation rules, rules for mutations, rules for technology, rules on the spaceship and what happened to the people. There are no stats in this game. It's traits. It's a D6 game, it looks like. So for like negative stats, you can roll up to -2 dice. Competent is 1 dice, good is 2 dice, and amazing is 3 dice. Plus, of course, things like mutations and personal effects and stuff like that. So yeah, that's what we know about it so far. It's had a very unusual history as the rights of the ownership have changed between James Ward's and his estate, Wizards of the Coast, TSR, Paizo, Goodman Games. So support me, Diet Coke. Yeah. So what do we know about this game? Science fiction, science fantasy. I would say the most likely, other than Gamma World, influence of this game you're probably aware of is either the great Saturday morning cartoon Thundar the Barbarian or the lesser known Black Star, which is basically perfect examples of science fantasy, where you have the fantasy aspects like, Ariel the sorceress. You have the science fiction aspects like the mutants and the sun sword and stuff like that. But then you just have the, everybody's forgotten what happened. So technology is viewed as magic. Nobody really knows what's going on. So we're all sort of just degraded into this quasi D&D barbarianhood that is Thundar or Black Star. I don't know anything about the System 26 other than I think it is a D6 system. So we seem to be running a lot of D6 systems. Yeah. So you make a character. The character can be human, mutant, plant, animal, robot. You can have mutations if you want. There's both positive and negative mutations. I think you get to roll them randomly. Positive ones give you bonus dice. Like here's one called Density Control. There's negative ones. Like smaller or, sensitivity to fire. Then you run into the weird tech. Yeah, it's a D6 system. All right, so let's first look at Metamorphosis Alpha, the strange, unsung hero of Dungeons & Dragons and role-playing in general. What many consider to possibly be the very first science fiction role-playing game, published first in 1976. So we're looking around the same time that D&D was first getting to be seen. Obviously, its influences on the hobby are still felt today. Expedition to the Barrier Peak. There's some influences of it in Tomb of Annihilation, going all the way back to Temple of the Frog, and the idea of, guns and robots and lightsabers and lost technology in the D&D setting. We will take another look at this going further, but this is just our initial look. Once again, thank you, Tim Samwise Harper, for sending this to me. It's definitely something I'm interested in. I've always known about Metamorphosis Alpha, but I don't think I ever played in it. I played Gamma World Traveler, but, and the idea of just they're sort of, being lost on a generational starship. So you don't know where you are. You have access to all this lost technology, but the world is finite because eventually you will run up to a wall or a zone you can't come into. And oh my God, just thinking about it, I can also see how this game influenced paranoia. So yeah, it should be fun taking a look at this. We will take a look at it again as we always do. If you appreciate this content, let me know down below. If you don't appreciate this content, let me know down below. If you're planning on unsubscribing because you think I'm an asshole, let me know why you're leaving by commenting down below. If you haven't had a chance to subscribe yet, please subscribe. It helps me know what's going on with you, and it helps you know what's going on with the channel. Support me, Soda. And since we're on Thanksgiving break, toss a coin to your Witcher by consider supporting me through the PayPal and the forthcoming Patreon. I will talk to you Thanksgiving losers later.